We can't let this week go by, Guy, without talking about the main story of the moment, because it's covering the whole of the media agenda, isn't it? And that's the Mandelson affair. I mean, it's the Epstein affair, really, but on this side of the Atlantic, it appears to have turned into the Mandelson affair.
Well, again,
it's given oxygen to Miss Badenoch, and who's the guy who's the representative for the SNP in Westminster now? I forget what his name is now, but he's highly elated about it.
It's Stephen, and his surname will come to me in a minute.
Yeah, Stephen. Well, Stephen, he's talking about. But I'm just wondering, digging down into the kernel of this particular issue, I'm a bit confused, and maybe you'd be able to enlighten me as to why we're where we are now as to where we were 2 weeks ago. So just to outline for anybody who's been living in a cave, Mr. Mandelson has been referenced in some of the Epstein files as having communicated with Mr. Epstein backwards and forwards over a period of time, and it had been established significant while back that Mr. Mandelson was still in contact with Mr. Epstein after he'd been convicted of child offences with regard to trafficking young.
Yeah, you could have found that on Google.
Yeah. So now we're in a position where some of these emails have suggested that Mr. Mandelson was sending what would be considered to be national secrets, basically, from Cabinet, when he was in Cabinet back in Gordon Brown's days, directly to Epstein. And some of them could be seen as helping Epstein take advantage of a market knowledge which wasn't generally available, what we used to call, I think, insider dealing to a degree.
Yeah, allegedly. There's a few things, wasn't there? The one that I heard on the radio was that it was common knowledge that I think the EU were going to support the euro in terms of its sort of failing at the time. Wasn't it in the middle of the financial crisis?
Yeah, it was a
Greece.
huge loan to Greece, wasn't it? That
yes.
To keep the Greek economy going.
And obviously that would move the euro. And if that information was shared with Mr. Epstein, who then shared it with, say, some investment bankers, for example, then they could buy euro. That there was that one. There was information about us selling some of our assets to pay down some of the borrowing which we'd had to raise to bail out the banks. Now that actually then happened. We did sell some of those assets. So those two things in particular. And then also, wasn't there something about information shared and then therefore suggesting that pressure should be brought to bear on Mr. Gordon Brown at the time, the Chancellor, to review the policy on bankers' bonuses?
Yes, I think it was, yeah.
And that those calls did subsequently happen.
Yeah.
They're just the three that I recall, let alone others that have gone unnoticed or unreported.
And to cement that particular issue, there was also an email from Mr. Epstein to Mr. Mandelson saying, from my perspective, Peter, it's all give. All I do is give to you, and you
I've heard that.
Anything back in return. And I think Mandelson, I haven't read the whole email exchange, but Mandelson made some platitudes about some of the things that he'd done and that he'd been there for him during his difficult
darkest hour.
Exactly. But the inference was that he'd not given enough. And then you start to question as to whether these offerings were a quid pro quo for what Epstein felt that he'd done for Mandelson. So I can see that. And I can see that were that information to have been available to Starmer when he appointed him as ambassador to the US, that would have been unforgivable. In fact, we could, from Mandelson's perspective, he could almost be looking at criminal activities, couldn't he? We wait to see what the police.
Well, the Met
looking at it.
Are investigating, aren't they?
Yeah. But Starmer didn't know that, and Starmer's position, really, in terms of what he has done and what questions there are with regard to his judgment, haven't really changed from 2 weeks ago to where they were yesterday. But the world seems to have erupted.
They haven't, but life isn't as simple as that, is it? It's if people were aware of Mr. Mandelson's ongoing contact, Mr. Epstein, after he'd been convicted, a certain number of people would have thought that's pretty bad. And then now they know that he'd done these other things as part of his relationship with Mr. Epstein.
Yeah.
It just raises the temperature, doesn't it? It raises the anger. And the only person in the firing line really is Sir Keir Starmer. And for me, though, the bit I don't understand is how can you appoint someone who is a known associate of a convicted paedophile? What possesses you to do that? So this inquiry, which is now going to be led by is it the ISC, the Internal Security Committee, as opposed to the Cabinet Office, which is what Starmer wanted. In other words, MPs in the House last night, 6-hour debate, didn't trust. So what's going to be really interesting is how that exchange went. And whether it was rigorous, as was suggested by the Prime Minister, or whether it was just a sort of a ticker box thing. Okay, you didn't know, right? You weren't that close to him. Fair enough. So that's a different. I know that's a different point, but that's where it's got to, because this inquiry might not have happened had this not all kicked off.
No, quite. And I mean, they were talking in the House yesterday, and there was conversations on the news programs I was watching yesterday as to what would have happened at about the point that he was due. And this is part of the information that they forced him to release, or trying to force him to release, isn't it? What would have happened at the point where he was about to appoint Mandelson as US ambassador would be that the security services would have provided him with a file of information, almost like one side saying, these are the pros appointing him, and these are the cons, and these are the things that might crop up in the future. The conversations that I've had with other people, and this might be one of the dangerous points that because they've been talking about holding back things for national security. One of the dangerous things that might trip Starmer up here is if by any chance in that file there were information relating to these emails that have taken place earlier in the day, because it seems incredible to me, and I don't know what you think of it, that on an effectively open email account, and it doesn't say much for our security services, if Mandelson can be sending what are perceived to be, allegedly, I cover ourselves quite significantly there, information that is of a national security nature to a foreign individual who he knows can take advantage, and the security services don't know about it. I mean, I had always thought they were on top of everything, that they were monitoring every email that went in, especially in,
I think that's mainly you, to be honest.
Is it me?
Yeah, they're keeping an eye on you, your activity.
Well, there's nothing here, nothing to see.
But one thing that did occur to me is if you look at the most recent sort of parallel to this inquiry and all the noise about it and who's doing it, the Met, all we're missing is a Sue Gray, really, type character. Remember her name was mentioned like every day, 10 times. The only parallel, this seems like the Partygate thing, and that didn't end well for the Prime Minister, did it?
No.
And I guess, accepting your point that actually nothing's changed, but it has, I guess just want to ask you a question. And that's, with this alone, if there was nothing else, do you think Sir Keir will survive this? Do you think he'll survive this as leader of the party and therefore Prime Minister?
I think the problem that he's got at the moment, and I won't go around the houses too far, but I think the problem that he's got at the moment is that there's such a short time span between now and the local elections and this, I'm going to say Gorton and Simpson by-election. It's Gorton and somewhere, the one in the northeast, that there's not time to produce anything else. So what I mean by that is, I think, ironically, on the domestic front, I think things are starting to turn around. They were talking about all shouted out by this event yesterday, but in terms of cancer care and in terms of increasing wages and in terms of money being, there's things happening on the domestic front that might have started to feed through and help him. But now all that's been, all that is on the periphery, that all anybody's interested in. Well, I'm assuming that, you and I are political geeks. There must be a lot of the country probably switch this off when they start. Apart from, I've been listening to some of the chats, there's vociferous women phoning in saying he needs to go. Awful. I don't know quite where this hatred of the man comes from, because I don't think he's.
I think as far as women are concerned, it's a little bit odd that I think one of the 5 Labour missions is violence and mistreatment against women, which is obviously a good mission. And therefore, against that, it's rather odd that he would have appointed Mandelson in the first place.
Yeah.
given the past and what we know is in the public domain. So whether it's that or not, I don't know. But so what are you saying? So just sort of hold
Yeah,
your feet to the fire here.
I
Are
haven't
you
answered
saying
your
that it
question, though.
depends on Gorton by-election?
I don't think he'll go that soon. I think it'll be after the May elections if he goes. I mean, I think there's still a possibility, talking to other people, what's the chief of staff's name? What's his name?
Morgan McSweeney.
Morgan McSweeney. That we might see Morgan McSweeney depart fairly quickly. I mean, there was talk in this, again, a lot of this is alleged, but there was talk in the conversations that I've been hearing that he allowed Mandelson to be vetting who would be Labour candidates around the country. And I'm not sure in my own mind that this appointment wasn't really, because he's an advocate of Mandelson. He was a great fan of Mandelson, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Whether he was the person that effectively appointed him, and that Starmer just went along with his recommendation.
Yeah, that reminds me of another parallel, the sort of Dominic Cummings parallel. Again, it might buy you a little bit of time, but it doesn't end well.
No.
Yeah.
I do think there's a difference between the Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson was directly involved. This is one step removed, I would say. This is
we don't know that, do we? We don't know that.
Well, I think I would contend that it is.
So it's the ISC you need to keep your beady eye on.
ISC. And what is, you haven't given me your view as to what you
I actually think this might not end well. I think that there could be some pretty damning evidence flows coming out of this inquiry. And, the general public and the party politics appetite to have a long-term leader, that seems to have gone from our nation.
Sad, isn't it?
Yeah, that's another pod discussion. I was talking to a friend about this the other day. What's happened? Why don't we want people to be in the chair for 3 or 4 years? And I think putting all that on top and all the other problems he's had, because it's problem after problem, it does remind me of Johnson's time. I actually think Mr. Starmer or Sir Keir Starmer's days might be numbered.